And so I finally, that morning in 2012, I went to the VA and I got some help. I'm not going to go super deep into that whole story, but I got some help. And this is kind of the pivotal point, right? So I'm 32 years old, and I started to get a little bit of help, and I started to share my feelings. I didn't do it at the VA. That was one of the worst days of my life. But hang on a second. So,
okay, yeah.
So the VA, God bless the VA. They're trying, but the system has a lot of issues. And I'm so grateful for all the incredible humans who work there, who are serving veterans and doing a great job. I think it's gotten better in the last 10 years. But in 2012, I went there and I had to tell my story like to 7 different times that day. I just got like kind of moved around from department to department. It was super weird. And at the end of the day, I got handed like a bag of prescription pills. And they're like, here you go. And I was like, well, I'm kind of ready to talk to somebody. And they were like, oh, okay, you want to talk to somebody? Yeah. We've got this group that meets once a month in a circle. And this is how it was described to me, with a group of guys that talks about their feelings. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is not what I wanted to hear, right? And like, this just sounds, and like the sterile environment with like the lights overhead, in the hospital. I'm just like, oh boy, like But anyway, I'm like, okay, all right, sounds good. When can I start? And they're like, oh, there's a 12 to 18 month waiting list. So I'm like, what, dude? So, all right. So I go home with my bag of pills, and my wife and I now, Brittany, we stayed up all night and created the first iteration of PTSD United, and that online, anonymous social network for trauma. And what happened when we started that network, and like the incredible thing was that people will come on there, and since it was anonymous, they would share their traumas, their stories, the things they've been through, what they're feeling. And what I realized, Sarah, was that like I didn't know what I was scared of. I didn't know what I was sad about. Like I'm sure there was a long list of things I could have been scared or sad about, but I didn't really know what. And that's super hard to talk about, right? It's like, hey, I feel terrible. I'm so worried about. I'm worried. Well, what are you worried about, man? I don't know. Really sad too. What are you sad about? I don't know. So like it makes it even harder to talk about. But then I was on this network, with these hundreds and then eventually thousands of people talking and talking. I started to heal, and I started to realize the biggest thing in the world, that I wasn't alone. And that like totally opened me up. I felt so much better. And then I started sharing my truths, and I started developing, and I started being more of me. And that's when the true happiness started coming. I stopped self-censoring. That's something we all suffer from, right? We feel, oh, I can't say that. Yes, you can. And you should, because there's someone else in the room that's trying to say something, that's trying to speak their truth, and they're afraid. And they're beat down from past circumstances and beliefs. And the reality is that we can open the door for them just by being ourselves and being more of us. And I started to learn that experientially and in a direct fashion.